All right. Abani everyone. This is Professor Amin Rahh along with co-host Joe Hembrick. We want to first welcome you to the show and say Asante Sana to Brother Rashaki for creating the format for us to have meaningful discussions about the development, the maintenance, the defense, and the unity of the Black population in the United States. What are critical issues? Where we try to dissect the news from those that distort it, falsify it, propagandize it, and try to make Black sense out of it. So we really welcome you to the show. Tonight's show is about Tulsa, Dreamland, the burning of Black Wall Street. And the format is whenever you have a question, just let us know and we'll go ahead and just start recognizing those questions, because, you have a sense of hesitancy because of the absence of a strong Black movement. When there's a strong Black movement, you have strong Black interests and strong Black concerns. And because of the sabotage of the Black conscious movement and the Black cultural movement, we have a tendency to have a be hesitant about getting involved in meaningful discussions. Education is the foundation of all methodologies to get a good understanding. And understanding ourselves through our struggle and through our challenges is very important. So we look at Tulsa and Dreamland, a presentation that was on CNN that was produced also by LeBron James and his one of his high school buddies and friends, and I guess partners in this production named Maverick. And they put on an in-depth documentary about Tulsa, the struggle, the challenges, what the people are doing, and really trying to educate people to what happened in Tulsa 100 years ago as they celebrated the 100 years of what happened in Tulsa that many people say they knew nothing about. And there's a lot of reasons for it. Some say it's because those that were involved wouldn't talk about it, their parents, grandparents. Others say they was just left out of the history books. And others say that it was purposely left out, and that the system didn't want to recognize the destruction of that community and the killing of many Black people and the bombing from the air and the burn down of the over 300 people killed and over hundreds of businesses and residents were just slaughtered. And so there's a struggle going on with many of the people from that era, the descendants. Some of them are 100 years old, they won, they testified, but they kept the struggle going. And that's why it came about. And their analysis was profound in the documentary. And at the same time, it was one in which was very educational to those that watched it. But at the same time, the struggle continued because of the various forms of activities by the dominant culture, and especially the state of Oklahoma, along with the city of Tulsa, that have failed up to this date to really make amends or even pay reparations or even recognize what they put the Black community through and what they did to the Black community with the institutions that was there at that time. And one of their arguments is that we weren't there, so we didn't do it, even though they benefited from what happened to those that town where people not only burned it, but before they burned it, they looted it. They looted the stores. They ramshacked the homes before they burned them down, and they buried over many of them in mass graves. And they don't know how many. They keep saying 300, but most people say it's way more than that. So we can't just let that go. So the issue is, we have to look at it, and we look at Tulsa, but you have to also have a global consciousness. The displacement and the destruction of Black communities and Black countries, and even a Black continent, like the continent of Africa, and various places like Hades and other Caribbean states, predominantly Black, that are being victimized even to this day. And even Black communities in the United States are being decimated by the urban gentrification, and at the same time, a way of doing it without the violence. They're breaking up Black community. What used to be central to the Black community was the fact that segregation made Black people live together and work together. And then the whole concept of integration and migration by Blacks from their own Black communities have just destroyed many Black communities. But getting back to Tulsa, Tulsa was, they look at Tulsa, but Tulsa's not in isolation. There was other towns and other cities in Wilmington, North Carolina, and in Allensworth, in California. And then there was a place that they talked about in 60 Minutes the other night called Africa Town. Again, and I think it was in Alabama, where brothers and sisters built a community, and they built a freeway through it, and just destroyed the whole fabric of the community where these brothers and sisters had built as they were on the last so-called illegal slave ship, to enslave them. And they got away and built a community. And then the system cracked back on them and destroyed them, and destroyed their community in Alabama. So that history is very, very, very important. And some of the questions is, what do we do about it as Black community? How can we be supportive of the reparations and restoration and the struggle of the people of Tulsa and the struggling of Black people all over the world? And there's a lot we can do, which we'll get into some of those answers. But right now, we want to get some comments from the listeners up to this point. And that's, Joe, if you want to add anything, Mr. Hembrick, go ahead.
Yeah, you kind of covered a lot. I wanted to comment about how this MO, this modus operandi has been part of the European scheme from the get-go, even way back in ancient times. With Egypt, they did it. The Romans did it on Carthage, where Hannibal was from. They destroyed the whole city, town, brick by brick. And this is what they do. Whenever, when he came up out that ice box and saw the rest of the world, how other people were flourishing, he couldn't take that. And so he ended up destroying it as he ransacked the cities, did it in Mexico and Technicline. They had that city on the lake. They had never seen anything like that. Them Spaniards, they still Europeans, though they from Spain, they did it. And all throughout Asia, which hopefully we get Brother Runoko Rashidi on and talk about his book, The African Presence in Early Asia. And when they came out of the north, they did the same type of similar thing, you know, destroying cultures that they found and you know, raping the land or resources and whatnot. Because that's what he was trying to find, resources, because Europe was kind of stingy as far as that went. That was the reason for, Rosewood and Allensworth, and anytime some black folk are doing better than them, you know, they get jealous and they look for any opportunity for something to happen for them to come in and destroy. Prior to the stuff happening in Tulsa, it had happened up in the northern cities, Chicago, Duluth, Minnesota. When those factories started hiring black people that came from the South for those jobs. So they were in competition for jobs and housing. So they would go in black communities and just destroy, kill people, hang people. It's at the Red Summer that was in Chicago when they had the beach separated and the brother kind of waded over to the white side and the people started throwing rocks at him and let him out there left him out there to drown, and there was a rebellion behind that. So Tulsa is not one isolated situation. It was happening all over the country, which gave rise to Garvey. Garvey would use that when the Garvey movement came about, saying, these people showing you that they don't want you and we need to go on back home. And so, like, I just want to get that in. This is not an isolated incident. This happened many times. If you Google, the riots on black people in the computer, a whole bunch of stuff will pop up. And not just nationally, but internationally, this stuff has occurred. So that's all I want to get in. Just give a, kind of like a historical background on what these people have been doing, calling themselves civilized in the world when they were not civil with anyone. They came to take, like Dr. Clark said, they always want things other people had, thought they couldn't do without, and don't want to pay for. They take what they want. And that was exactly what happened in Tulsa. Greenwood was thriving far beyond anything they ever imagined. And so they just waited for the opportunity to come in and destroy, and that's exactly what happened. So people want to chime in questions, go ahead. I'm through, brother.
All right, well, that was a good perspective. And one of the books that would be very interesting to read is called The Destruction of Black Civilization by Chancellor Williams, who did over 30 years worth of research. And he said that when he got ready to study African history, he didn't go to Africa, he went to Europe. And they asked him, why did you go to Europe? He said, because they had stolen everything out of Africa and put it in European museums. And that's how he was able to trace it back and the resources back. But any other comments anybody have would like to make at this point? Anybody, you have to take yourself off mute.
Well, I don't know if I'm out of line right here, but I was going to just put a comment in and say that I did learn about Allensworth. I'm going to say about 22 years ago. I had the privilege to go and visit Allensworth with my aunt, my late aunt here. She took me and my cousins, and we were able to learn about that town. And so I did have that little bit of experience with Allensworth.
Okay. Yeah, they messed up the water. Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, well, I've been there a few times myself. Matter of fact, they're getting ready to have a big celebration. Juneteenth, they have a big celebration every year. I don't know if they're doing with COVID, but I went there. The time I went, I was 17, and one of Colonel Allen Allensworth's granddaughters was still living there on the site. This is before they fixed it up and turned it into a national park. But one thing I'd say about Allensworth that was significant, it's like 50 yards from the railroad track. And I don't know if any of you guys saw Rosewood, how close the railroad tracks were to, that town where you can get a lot of the stuff you need to build. And they were building and had an exceptional town going. And the white folks got jealous and cut the water off. And then they put poison into the ground so the black people couldn't grow anything. And then around 1906, Colonel Allensworth, who was the first black chaplain in the Army, he was down in LA visiting, because they had came from LA in the Bay Area to trying to start their own town to escape the racism that they were experiencing up north and down in the Southland. And he was on a motorcycle and somebody hit him and killed him. And then it started going down. But it was him and his brother who got Allensworth started, way back around 1900. But now you can go visit it. It's a state park. You can catch the Amtrak, and the Amtrak will, they got a van at the park that'll come pick you up. It's about 50 yards from the track, and they'll take you. You can visit the town. You can get on the Amtrak and go back home if you don't want to do that drive. It's about 30 miles north of Bakersfield, for those of you who do not know. And they got an organization called the Friends of Allensworth, where they plant trees trying to get the soil back restored so they can grow food up there. All right, that was it.
Okay. Thanks, Aziza, for that comment on Allensworth. Thank you for the response, Zante, for that. Any other comments? Doctor? Any other comments? Well, let me just say this. As we look and do research and study, as Brother Hembrick was saying, you see a pattern. You see a strong pattern. The burning of Wall Street and the presentation. And we appreciate LeBron James, Jim, for doing the documentary. And we appreciate the individuals that were part of that documentary and made comments on it. But it's very important for the people of Tulsa. Listen to them. You don't want other people to explain it to us, to excuse them for what they did or what their ancestors did. When you begin to look at the history of displacement and destruction of Black communities and civilizations globally, you also have to look at what they did to Asia and how come the Chinese are over, or way over on the coast, on the southern coast, what they call Southeast Asia. And why, how did they get over there? And how did Russia become about? The Russians are just Europeans who came from the Caucasoid Mountains and did the same thing that America did to North America, the Caucasians here. What they did to the Native American, we have to look at things in relationships, not only to what we've been through, but what other people of various ethnic groups and racial groups have been through. So you look at the Native American, where over 7 million of them were wiped out on the auspices of moving west and a manifest destiny. Then you look at what is going on not only historically, what happened to Egypt and Ethiopia, turning from Black to brown to white. There are ways in which that they do it without you even knowing what's going on. I remember in 1965, we was in the Watts Rebellion. Watts was a Black area that was predominantly Black. And the various 3 projects, Nicholson Garden, Jordan Downs, and imperial courts. And then at the same time, many Black people lived throughout the Watts community. They had some beautiful homes, beautiful places throughout Watts, because everybody lived together. The professionals and the working class lived in Watts along with the poor. So you had a Black community. They had Black hamburger stands, Black shoe shine parlors, Black barbershops, had Black hotels up and down Central. You had, just like Black Wall Street. Black businesses were flourishing. Black people were flourishing. They were buying homes, moving out the project. Through relentless struggle, though. It was relentless struggle that they were. People came from the South, and they would help each other. They would live with each other until they got on their feet. And it came with a strong work ethic and a strong spiritual ethic. After the Watts Rebellion, the system started what they call urban renewal, which was really urban removal, because they saw the strength of Black people living together, and they wanted to break that up. So they began to entice Black people to move out of the working class, to move to areas, the Merino Valleys, the San Bernardinos, all over, by getting them loans and getting them out of the Black community, the working class. And that put a drain on the Black community, left without just the poor there. It's just like Leimert Park and Crenshaw. You have a Chinatown, you have a Korean town, you have a Vietnamese town, you have, well, they didn't want to call that Crenshaw Boulevard and that Leimert Park area Black town. So they just called it the Crenshaw District. Mm. And so now there's an effort, because Leimert Park was looked at as a rallying place where Blacks were galvanized to organize and to protest and to have rallies. Well, they're trying to destroy that whole area, even though it's a historical area and there's still some Black people that still are doing things there, from the Vision Theater. Martha Gibbs had a place out there. But there's an effort to displace Black people, what they call gentrification. There's a struggle for the Crenshaw Mall right now, led by the Crenshaw Subway Association, and they're trying to buy the mall as Black people, because they want to tear it down and just build high-priced apartments and condos there, and so people can walk their dogs and turn it into like a West Hollywood area with white gays and white liberals that's supposed to be. So there's an effort to move Black people out of various communities throughout our history. You look at what's going on in the continent of Africa with colonialization, not only by whites, but by Chinese, by Russian. America got over 25 to 50,000 troops on the continent of Africa. You got China building things and building walls and things of that nature. You look at Hades, the same thing. Hades is still paying reparations to France for their independence struggle. So there's a lot going on that we as a people must educate ourselves to and reconstruct the movement. You look what the white Israelis are doing to the Palestinians, bombing those communities, killing people, and destroying people, destroying business districts, and trying to break the will of the people, but they continue to struggle. when you look at Black Wall Street, they talked a lot about what whites did to the blacks, but they never talk about the many blacks shot and killed some whites, but they kept that secret because they didn't want black people to have an image of black people resisting. But black soldiers had guns and a lot of them got wiped out, but they killed a lot of whites too. And they wouldn't even give those statistics because the image of us as resistant. Go ahead, Joe.
They killed 50 white folks.
Well, probably more than that. That's what they agreed to. That they couldn't hide. My point is that, we didn't just like they think that we were just docile in slavery. And they try to act like the Emancipation Proclamation freed us. No, it was a relentless struggle that created our liberation, starting with the Haiti Revolution and the rebellions of blacks on plantations throughout the Holocaust of enslavement. And then at the same time, the displacement of the Native American. I mean, you can't say God gave you some land. God's not a real estate agent. This is what is going on. As Malcolm said, it's always the landless against the landlords. And the first thing you want to do whenever you take over a country or a continent or land is set up your own jurisprudence system, your own justice system, your own law system. In the book, In the Matter of Color, by a black Judge Higginbotham, made his soul rest in peace. He wrote a book called In the Matter of Color. And he talked about how the European would come in and set up his court systems and his jurisprudence system that said that he had the right to do what he was doing and what he was doing was legal. It's much like what happened to black people getting shot running from the police. It's always justified by their courts and things of this nature. And what's going on in Black Wall Street, they have a commission that's supposed to be looking in, they're collecting money, and they have not paid no reparations. There was over 30 blocks. Now it's down to 1 block. And they ran a train station and a freeway through the middle to make sure the black people couldn't rebuild. So all of those things are going on. But we as a people struggle in our own ways with what we have. And so we have to compliment those that are continuing the struggle, the Pan-African movement, the Black Lives Matter movement, the reparations movement, the Black cultural movement, Renaissance. All of those things are essential. And that's one of the reasons they fought against Black studies, because they didn't want you researching or your teachers teaching you about the resilience of your people, the organizations of your people, and the struggles of your people that had liberalized this country in many ways, because we would still be in slavery if it wasn't for the relentless struggle and fight of Black people from Nat Turner to Harriet Tubman, all the way up to today. Black freedom fighters, Dr. Molina Abdullah out of Cal State LA, the Western Regional Representative of Black Lives Matter, Black Studies Professor, Dr. Maulana Karenga, the organization US, BCCLA, Black Clergy, Black Community Clergy and Labor Association, Black United Front, the National Black United Front out of New York, the National Reparations Organization. There are so many things going on with regards to struggling for Black people justice. All right, any comments so far?
Mm-hmm.
Nobody? Just Professor Rahh, if I may, just to go back on some things you had covered already about when we had these things going on. You got to remember, in the late 1880s and early 1900s, you know, Booker T. Washington out of Tuskegee had a hell of a program where these black societies were able to come together by doing for self, by operating in what I call self-reliance. You rely on you and your people for everything. You know, they had all kind of factories and whatnot, shoe factories, lumber yards, brick yards, and segregation, you know, was at its zenith, which I think is a good thing. And then, you know, even in sports, you know, the old Negro League baseball, you know, they were outdoing the white folks, and not just baseball. They had like cycle racing. They were jockeys and trainers in the horse racing industry, and even up in Canada, they were ruling in hockey. They had some black hockey leagues up in Canada where it was all black, and these things were doing so well. You know, they had to undo them, and so they blew up the town of Nova Scotia where the hockey stuff was going on, and then they brought in brother King to undo the segregation stuff we had going. We, so we can sit next to white folks and eat a hamburger and drink a cup of coffee. And we had our own schools where people were learning essential things for survival. And then you get into integration, and all of that stuff is gone. I used to, like today, you go through a formerly black neighborhood, and it's hard to spend your money with anybody that looks like you. It's a shame, but that's the way it is. So I think we need to draw on these examples of the past to recover ourselves, to get back to where we need to be, and on whatever level you can do it. Everybody ain't got big money or this or that, but there's some things you can do about looking out for each other, helping each other, and to pick up the words from Francis Cress Wells, and keep your word. One of the things that I think that's stopping us is our inability, to get along, so to speak, and our word doesn't carry the weight that it used to carry. I know when I was a kid, the old man used to say, "Son, if your word don't mean nothing, you ain't nothing." So keep your word. If you give your word, keep your word. If you can't do it, then let the person know why you can't keep your word. So these sort of things, and then the second thing we can do, if you can't do nothing else, keep it clean where you are. Pick up the trash, pick up the junk, have it looking decent. And these are some things that anyone can do until you can do better. But until we can look in that mirror and love what's looking back at us, we got a long way to go. And that's a big part of our problem, is we don't, we've been taught to hate ourselves by all of the things that we've gone through, and we need to get back to loving, what we are. So anybody have any questions out there now?
But let me just make a quick comment. People, you have to understand, when they called it Dreamland, the burning of Black Wall Street, and that sounds like a nice title, but it really doesn't speak to the reality of what they did. Greenwood was not a dreamland. It was a land that African people and Black people lived on. It wasn't a dream, it was a nightmare. And they need to put it in its right perspective so that people would say it. That's what we mean, how editors, you may produce it, but editors change the narrative. The burning of Black Wall Street, it's like they burned the street. Oh, they burned people. They bombed people from the air. And even though it got into that by the witnesses that testified, about the murders and the killing. But the title was misleading as far as I was concerned. As a professor of Black studies, I would have liked for it to be called a mini Holocaust of Black people. What this system thrives on is counterintelligence, to counter your intelligence. And they had a program called COINTELPRO, counterintelligence. And that is to take on the narrative, destroy and neutralize Black leadership. Make sure, like it's like what's going on today, the news commentators on CNN, some of the Black news commentators, especially the males, most of them are all gay. And most of them are married to white men, or dating white men, or engaged to white men, from Don Lemon to all the ones on MSNBC. And Dr. Robert Staples talked about the demasculinity of the Black male. And this system, and you know, we appreciate the progress of Black women, because in the absence of strong Black men, the women take over and move, and rightfully have done a great job. And if it wasn't for their struggle, we'd be in a lot more trouble as single mothers and as mothers, because of the biggest Black communities are in jails, prisons, federal and states. You will find plenty of Black people in there, and they're segregated. The majority of Blacks hang with Blacks, and the majority of Latinos hang with Latinos, and the white nationalists hang with white nationalists. Even on visiting days, they separate what group goes on their special day, and that you won't see none but that group in prison. My point is that this system has a strategy of polarization and neutralization by subliminal suggestion and kidnapping our people, first by television and radio, then by, whereas the television became the babysitter for many parents, the cartoons and the subliminal seduction that white heroes always win, and by the end of the show, the white man then beat up the villain, or always winning, never losing, and portray all other ethnic groups as savages. They portrayed the most peaceful people out were Native Americans. If they were warriors, they would have killed the first white folks they saw coming over here. But they invited them in as guests. Even the Pilgrims had to admit that the Native Americans taught them how to grow food out here. And that's where Thanksgiving came from, with Thanksgiving. And the point is that you got to know your history and know your struggles. It's like Sierra Leone and Liberia, where Black people went over there to set up countries and areas in Africa, and Europeans set up governments. And what I mean by that, throughout our history, whites have always chose our leaders, inviting them to the White House, eat hors d'oeuvres on the White House lawn, and making sure that they go, and whenever there's an uprising, like they go to pray and march and sing "We Shall Overcome" and calm everybody down, and then get out of town. They pick your leaders. Some of the leaders were hustlers. You know, I mean, these organizations, they pay big money. You couldn't travel. You know, and I don't want to get into name calling, but almost every major organization was supported by white philanthropists, civil rights organization, integrationist organization. I'm not saying we shouldn't have took it, and I'm not saying some benefits weren't realized by those groups to a certain degree. but it was always the Caucasian. And when we chose our own leaders, they were either assassinated or imprisoned. Adam Clayton Powell,
Or
who
exile.
put on the first Black Power Conference, who integrated Congress, who put forth what they called the Powell Amendment, which was the one in which no state, any state that practices segregation couldn't get federal money. He tied that amendment to every legislation that he proposed. Next thing you know, they got rid of Adam Clayton Powell. Charles Diggs, he was the only congressman that went to Emmett Till's trial. 2 or 3 years later, he's indicted. We can go on and on of Black people that stood up for Black people that was either assassinated. Martin Luther King, nonviolent. They didn't kill him because of his demonstrations and integration. They killed him because of heresy. That means the way he thought, his ability to take the white man religion and turn it into a movement for liberation of his people. He was a healer, you know, a problem solver. And he questioned America. He said, "You're the biggest purveyors of violence on the planet." That's what Martin Luther King said. So, you know, when he got on Vietnam and got on poor people, next thing you know, a bullet goes through his head. This is a serious war we're in. You may not be at war, but you're definitely in a war. So trying to lift the consciousness of our young people is very challenging when Europeans control their reality and make their reality the Black people reality. So we live a life of just wanting to be American instead of wanting to be African and wanting to be Black. Any comment?
Professor Rahh,
Yes.
I would like for you to speak about how the initiation, how things got started, like with the Black teenage boy and the white teenage girl, to ignite what happened, or the excuse that caused them to come in and destroy Black Wall Street, and then also the comparison to how Emmett Till was murdered. Can you talk about that?
Well, first, Dr. Francis Cress Wilson said, Black men don't choose white women choose Black men. Because all the white woman he's trying to rape me and they get killed or put in jail. So if she's accommodating and they do it for materialistic ways, notoriety, whatever, and sometimes many of Black men think that white women are attractive. But getting back to your question, this has been a common perspective. Dr. Francis Cress Wilson has always argued that the majority of the laws of segregation and the majority of the lynchings and murders was all about the Black male problem aspects of a sexual object to white women and protecting white people from the Black sex aspects of the Black male. So when Emmett Till, who allegedly said, now the woman has admitted he didn't do it now, but they won't charge her. And there's a movement by Emmett Till's aunt that woman should be charged for lying on Emmett Till that led to his killing. But she said that he whistled at me, or his uncle said what he said was "bye, baby," and somebody said he said that, but there's no record of him saying either one. But the point is that in less than an hour, they found the white people who did it innocent. And then a year later, they admitted that they did it. And then that's, because they got off, they didn't retry them. But they could have retried them for something else. They didn't have to retry them for murder, but they could have retried them for something else. Violation of civil rights, blah, 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 the federal government. But at that time, the FBI did not get into civil rights cases. The issue with Greenwood, a Black community, brother was supposed to have been on the elevator and said something to the white woman, or she said he assaulted her. Now she's admitted that she lied, and they was going to lynch him. And so some Black soldiers went down there to try to defend it. And the white sheriff deputized every white man he could find, and they had a shootout, and the brothers had to retreat, and then they just went on the wild. But the whole concept of ethnic purity, of the concept, even to this day, white folks frown on mixed couples. That's what you're having with the white nationalist movement with Trump. When he's talking about we got to, put America first. They had an article the other day about a congressman saying we got to stand up for white people. Then they're talking about reverse discrimination. But their whole concept is the reason they're killing people of color or people is to protect the white woman. And that was their whole justification for those type of things. And there's a whole history to that. But at the same time, the white woman went along with it. That's why they sit there and they say, well, we didn't do it, but you didn't do nothing to stop it either. You're supposed to administer aid to those that suffer. And, so all of that's a part of white nationalist movement. They believe that the top 10 states up north are supposed to be just for white people, starting with Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, South and North Dakota. All of that's supposed to be white nationalist countries. And the southern countries, states, supposed to be for Black people. That's what the Nation of Islam was talking about. But anyway, but that's what happens. The history of Black men being lynched because the white woman said they raped them. Look recently at the white women who said that they were assaulted by a Black person and they find out that they had lied because they were assaulted by someone else or they had did something else. And they said a Black man robbed me or a Black man did this. And people accept it. In a book called it's Black Violent Criminals and Crimes by Silverman. He talks about this, and Haki Mahadabuti in his book, Enemy Classes of Race, he talks about this whole concept of racism is not just not liking Blacks, it's destroying their lives, taking their lives, and anything else they can take from them based upon their race, putting a premium on their race. This is like apartheid system. You have Black people who win the Rhodes Scholar and don't know that Cecil Rhodes was one of the biggest killers of African people on the continent of Africa. And that was, they named the country after him called Rhodesia, and they just changed it back to Zimbabwe after they got their liberation. People who are free name themselves. Slaves and pets are named by their masters. And that's why, once I became conscious, I changed my name to Rahh. Name it, and I named my children African names, me and my wife. Some we created, some we got out of the book. But it's important that I wasn't going to name none of my kids Sally or Heather or those names are either Makita, European names, and things of that nature. So that was very critical. Go, any questions?
Mm-mm.
Y'all got to have some questions.
Comments or something.
Or comments. All this struggle we in. See, this is a hesitancy. You have to think, you have to read. You don't have to. You should read, should study, and should be able to analyze what's going on. I practice a philosophy called Kawida. Kawida philosophy introduced by Dr. Karenga, and he said there's no substitute for an aware, organized, and engaged people constantly involved in a multiplicity of activities to define, defend, and advance their interests. And you look at the male-female relationships. I mean, that's a very critical thing. If you have to have the highest, that's the most meaningful relationship you'll ever be in. It's what creates life, male and female. You can argue that males have the right to love males and make love to males, and women have the right to be lesbians and transgenders and all whatever. But the natural aspect of reproduction is heterosexual activity. And we sometimes get caught up in European lifestyles and concepts of life when we need to stay within our own cultural apparatus. And I'm not saying we should punish or hurt or discriminate against any person, regardless of their sexual orientation or mentality, even if they're Uncle Tom, leave them alone. But at the same time, we have to have a concept of what Black manhood is and what Black womanism is, and have the highest respect for each other. We must see each other as sacred beings, and we must depend, as Joe was saying, on each other to be there and to keep their word and to do and to live a good life. And a good life, you can't live a good life if you don't know who the hell you are. You don't have no good self-understanding. I created this term called cultural AIDS, acculturation immune deficiency syndrome. Biological age is acquired immune deficiency syndrome. That means that your body immunity to foreign germs and cannot defend itself against any form of infections or any form of pathologies that gets into your body. Your body immune system is so weak, it can't fight it off. Well, acculturation is your culture is so weak, you can't fight off the drug culture. You can't fight off the various cultures of alcoholism. You can't fight off all those things that tears you down, and sometimes you just give up and give in, and don't even want to deal with identity, history, or culture. These are very important things. How you gonna raise your children if you ain't gonna tell them the truth about what they got to go through? I mean, everybody's saying, well, I gotta talk to my kids about the police. No, you gotta talk to your kids about white people, period. All of them, not just the ones with badges. You understand? You got to talk about social institutions and the importance of how they can navigate their life through all these institutional roadblocks that are up there, from the criminal justice system, political system, economic system, that is all geared against their progress. They had this Black graduation on the other day. And everybody, you can realize your dream. You can get that. None of them talked about, hey, you better get ready for some serious racism have 2 or 3 things going for you, not just one dream. You better have 4 or 5 of them, because some of them gonna turn into nightmares. Even though you're the best qualified, you ain't gonna get the job. So sometimes you have to create ways to keep going. But none of them want to talk reality. They want to talk fantasy. You know that despite all the obstacles, you can still run your head into the wall and don't get a headache. But anyway, any other comment?
Professor Rahh.
Yes.
I have a paper on the website called The American Dream. I encourage everybody to go to communityeducationnetwork.com and check out the perspective readings or writings is titled. And I have one that says, "Why do you chase the devil?" And it's a poem, and I explained every line of the poem. The American Dream. I talked about the American Dream, which is just a dream. And there's various things that could that you could realize as a person growing up in America. Now, when I was coming up in Compton, I was learning the ways of, I would say, of the white man, even though I was in a black town. So I was learning how to be a person that drinks alcohol. As Professor Rahh says, sexual consumption. I was learning those type of behaviors and not getting anything that was significant or pertinent to the way we really should be living. So when I developed all of these ways that wasn't, I would say, correct, I had to realize that I was living an incorrect way, and then I had to start making a change. So I'm in the process of writing a book called Mental Revolution, and I'm not going to give up the rest of the title, but basically we have to delete what we have learned through this white racist system, and then upload information that is wholesome, significant, and the things that we should be doing versus the things that we shouldn't be doing. So we have to really start going within, and then also be able to listen to people like Professor Rahh and people that come visit the podcast and learn things about the things we really should be doing as people versus the way of the heathen, I would say. So I just wanted to add that. But if you visit the website, there's a forum also on the website where you can go on there and write things, write your thoughts, and have people respond to it. So I want to encourage that, to start interacting about yourself and the way you think things should be as Black people, because we are living in a racial context. So since we are living in a racial context, you should really be pro-Black, because that's what you are. And that's the people that are on here that are Black. And I'm not taking anything else away from humanity, because that's another level. We haven't even reached that. We're in a color construct. So, okay, I just wanted to say that.
Well, that's a good point. Anybody else have a comment at all?
Well, I guess I'll chime on in again, brother, since nobody's taking the floor, because we kind of dancing around this subject of why we can't. And I'll just put it on out there that the reason we're not in the fight, the reason we're looking for somebody else to solve all of our ills is because of religion. I know folks don't like talking about that, but it's a fact. We're looking for God, Jesus, Allah, whomever, to solve our situations that we're in. But we got plenty of time for the party. I remember Francis Cress Wells used to say, our people love to party, but we've been at war for 3,000 years. When you at war for 3,000 years, how much time you got to go to a party? But that's what we do. we have ingested all of these European values, and that's partly why we can't get ourselves together. I remember you had the thing on mental health. That's a big problem why we suffer from the mental health that we do, because we're putting ourselves up against a standard that is not for us. It was created for our conqueror. That's his system. That's why we going stone crazy trying to be like him, and we're not him. And going back to the sexuality of the black man and the white woman, you know, you can go back to the Bible, to the curse of Ham. You know, and Ham was cursed for laughing at Noah's nakedness. Excuse me. And there's a couple of Bibles that still have the original curse. They've changed the one in the King James and all of that. But the one that's still in the Dutch Reformatory Church of South Africa and the one with the Church of Latter-day Saints, it still says in there that for as far as the curse of Ham, for laughing at my nakedness, your lips shall swell, and your eyes shall be bloodshot red, and you should be shamefully elongated. Means that the men gonna have big, you know, sexual organs. I guess that's the part the white woman was listening to, and that's why she's on the brothers like she is. I just put it out there. And so, you know, that is a big part of why we can't get to where we need to be. That's why the elders used to say, in order to free ourselves, we got to do away with everything we learned from this people, like you were saying, Brother Roskani, about the value system that we've learned. And like I said previously, you know, we come from societies that didn't have a word for jail, didn't have a word for old folks' home, convalescent home, orphanages, and all that, because we took care of our people. These are things that we learned from this conqueror. And he has that religion to keep us right there in place. So instead of getting out there and rolling up our sleeves, we looking for someone else or some other deity or whatever to solve the problem, when nature will show you, the Neteru will show you where we need to be going as a people, because that's where we come from, nature. And a lot of us don't even like to get out there in it. You know, we don't want to get dark. You need to get in that sun and build up some chakra to wake up that pineal gland and that melanin in your body to tell you what to do. A lot of times we've experienced all that stuff, but we don't know what we've been experiencing because we don't know our real stuff. You know, we're going off on another man's thing. And that's why the confusion is like it is. So, you know, we got to find out what's ours, each one teach one, and move from there. And if you need a spirituality thing, just look inside yourself. It's there. You ain't born in no sin. How a baby born in sin and you just been born and you in sin already? So the man got you, you know, from the gate that you already jacked up when you get here. But that's his story. That's not our story. So we need to learn our story. Like Malcolm said, you know, history is the main subject to reward your research. And that's something that we fail to do. But it's there. Just take your time, get at it a little bit at a time, and then just keep growing from there. But as long as you keep embracing the stuff we've been taught and learned by these other folks, the problem's going to persist. So that's the only comment I want to make on that subject.
Okay, Teresa Ross had raised her hand.
Yeah, I wanted to say that it's very frightening the times we're living in right now, because white people are getting together and they have a plan. They're making a plan, and we just seem to be sitting back thinking that everything is cool and it'll all turn around and things will all get better. But that's not going to happen, because Trump is going to win again in 4 years. Him and all his cronies, they are going to take over this country. We have to do something before it's too late.
Well, and who are you directing that question to, Teresa?
Oh, it's not a question. It's just something that a way that I feel. And I'm just wondering, what can we do to reach the masses? Because I don't think Black people are listening, or they don't want to know.
Can I respond to that?
You sure can.
Okay, so one thing, we really can basically change ourselves, each individual. So if Miss Ross can do things that can show us an example of how to be, we should do that and pay attention to what example you're providing for us. I know I'm the way I'm living, I'm doing my best to provide an example of how to be and participate in podcasts and educational information that will increase my person. And so I have to set an example before the people to show them how I could be. And then Professor Amon Rahh, Brother Doctor, Brother California, Joe Hembrick, I think by us doing what we're doing and providing an example is one way.
Right.
And like I said, participate in activities that is mind stimulating to invoke thought. That's why I have the form on the website. I'm putting something out there for people to engage in this type of dialogue, and also start programming and doing things that we could do to improve our situation,
Mm-hmm.
in all areas. So I think that's one way that we could bring about changes, changing ourselves and improving ourselves so that people can see that it can be done.
Right. We need to share. We need to get this kind of information out to a broader audience, because people are totally unaware.
Well, this is why we're doing it, and I had
Right.
to make sure Professor. Well, I was wanting Professor Amon Rahh to have his voice on a broader, spectrum,
Right.
and Joe Hembrick, and there's other people on here that could provide some information, and Sister Aziza, so we, Miss Ross, share with everybody that
Right.
what we're doing, and I think that's going to help.
Yeah.
It
So we
should.
definitely need to share.
Appreciating what's been said. There was a Star Trek movie Dr. Pring always points to called Tellus 4, where the people, they put them in a machine and made them think they ain't doing what they were doing. Many of us think Black people are not doing things, but we've done a lot. If it wasn't for Black people, you wouldn't have a Black woman vice president.
Yes.
You wouldn't have had a Black president. If it wasn't for Black people, you wouldn't have those 2 senators out of Georgia. If it wasn't for Black people, Biden wouldn't be president. If it wasn't for Black people, George Floyd would have been just another brother dead for the demonstration. We had a Million Man March and a Million Man March 2, Million Women March, Black people, Black Lives Matter movement. There's a lot of people doing things. It's just the system makes you think you're not progressing.
Right.
And even some of the religion, there are people that abuse religion, misuse it, misrepresent it.
Mm-hmm.
But most of our progress from a spiritual standpoint, of making people better people from a moral and ethical standpoint, they rely on their religion to get them off drugs, to be better fathers, to be better, they get married in church even though they never been to church. They get buried at church. Pookie going to church, and he was a wild gang member, but his mama wanted him buried by a minister. There are functions. Churches served as sanctuaries and community services before there was welfare and before there was state. Matter of fact, when Black people travel, they always say, "Where's the Black church?" Because they know there's a black church somewhere. I agree with Mr. Hembrick about that there are people that have been confused with religion and religion has abused many black people with ministers and congregations that are not in struggle. But Martin Luther King, Minister Farrakhan is a minister. Malcolm X was a minister. Frederick Douglass was a minister. Harriet Tubman was a minister. But their gospel of liberation is different from the gospel of prosperity, the Noel Jones and the guy out of Texas, and all of them. These are gospel for prosperity, and they only the prices out of L.A. and California. All of them were for prosperity. They weren't for a social movement. They were against social movement. They say, just bring me your money and we just stay in the church. But there are other ministers, like the Poor People Movement, that I forget his name, Bright, start with a B. They just had a rally at Senator Manchin's office, the Poor People Movement, by this a black minister. There are some activists that are ministers that do a good job. Now, I'm not really a supporter of Al Sharpton, because I think that he used his ministry to get on TV, and since he got on TV, he's not the same person. But at the same time, I'm not going to get on TV and talk about him, but I question his motives, his history, as far as maintaining. But he's done some good things too, and people use him to draw crowds and to bring notoriety. So you get what you can out of them.
Right.
But you can't say to me that some people, that religion didn't help some people. It has helped a lot of people in many ways. I remember the Nation of Islam took people off drugs. They had a 24-hour, 24/7. It's all about, their religion. And I'm not saying that Muslims didn't enslave black people on the continent, but it wasn't the Nation of Islam. But anytime you join an organization, maybe a church organization or anybody else, you're subject to being abused by the leadership and by the members if you're not conscious and don't protect yourself mentally and spiritually when you go in. If you just go hog wild in and sign over your property and try to pay your tithes and think you're gonna get in heaven, well, hey, without an airline ticket, you're gonna fly away. Well, that's a whole different story. Any other questions? Well, and
Rashaki.
Rashaki, I guess we can end it up then. Nobody want to talk. But Teresa, I want to thank you for your comments, and we really appreciate your comments and your perspective. But there are a lot of women like yourself are in leadership roles. The leadership of the Los Angeles Black Lives Matter that led to the election of a district attorney that's getting rid of trying to get rid of bail, trying to get rid of the death penalty, and the white folks are rising up against them. Even though they got rid of a black sister who, I question that, but the point is that they did make a movement and it flourished. They're there all the time raising sand about black police abuse. They're still meeting at the police commission, trying to not defund the police, but channel some of its resources to social institutions and things. So it's good. It's good. I mean, we appreciate the women and Sister Aziza for her earlier comment. We appreciate all of that, because our measure of progress is going to be based on our male-female relationship. You want to show how people get along. You look how they treat each other. Are they marrying? Are they raising their families? As some of the speakers have already said, are they really seeing each other as sacred beings and and things of this nature. All right.
Okay,
Yeah. So thank you again. Mhm.
thank you.
All right. You must do kind.
Thank you, Ms. Ross.
All right. Where we at?
Okay.
You're
Pastor
welcome.
Pastor Key, you ready to cut it loose?
Yeah, if you're ready.
Okay,
Yeah.
Okay, so on Wednesday we have Brother Thomas coming back on. So the CEN show on Wednesday, if you guys are interested, Brother Thomas is coming on. And Professor Rob, what about next week?
We're gonna do a thing. We're gonna try to get. We got 2 projects. We're gonna try to get. What's his name, Joe? You just talked to
Renoko Rashidi.
Renoko Rashidi. We're gonna deal with black male-female relationships. How to improve them, how to maintain them, and what is the issues that's keeping us from having the highest respect and appreciation of each other.
right.
Okay.
Sounds good.
All right, Professor Rahh.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Joe Hembrick.
All right.
All right.
Will
Good
that
night.
also be on Monday, or will
No.
that be on be another day?
That's gonna be a Wednesday.
Wednesday.
So y'all having 2 shows on Wednesday?
No, just
You talking about the
Okay.
Ross show Thursday. Excuse me.
Okay,
Right, Brother Ross?
this Thursday.
Well, whenever Rashidi can be, if he can be here on Thursday, we'll do it Thursday. But if he can't, we're gonna do Monday, male-female relationship. We'll let you know in time.
it'll be
Okay,
on
absolutely.
the website. Okay.
Thank
Good
you.
night. Good night, everybody.
All right.
All right.